for lack of a better term, election process. We monitored in the news that according to Commissioner Rowan Aguanzon, a little over 1 million voters have registered of the expected 4 million. And therefore, given the timetable of a September 30 deadline, how can we ensure that as many who are willing and able to register are able to register? And second, there was also a news report quoting your spokesperson in the COMELEC, Mr. Jimenez, that 7 million voters have been deactivated, whether it's because of death or because of failure to vote twice consecutively in 2 consecutive elections. We'd like to find out because, again, 7 million is a huge number. We would like to know what efforts are being put in place. I understand there have been some adjustments made in terms of office hours. I also understand that there has been a decision to open registration or have registration during Saturdays. And these are welcome developments. I'm also interested to know if there are 4 million or 3 million voters, new voters still expected to register. How many must register every day until September 30 so that we can cover the 3 million? And in addition, if there are 7 million deactivated voters, how many would want to be reactivated? And based on the figures, maybe roughly what? Maybe 4 plus maybe 3, maybe 7 million voters who want to register until September 30. Is this feasible? What personnel amount of employees and staff of COMELEC will be mobilized? Where will they go? And how can they accommodate the millions that are expected or we are hoping will be able to register before September 3rd? Yun lang po, Madam Chairperson. We'd really like to hear the plans and the interventions of the COMELEC so that we can also raise some questions later on. Maraming salamat again, ma'am, for this opportunity. Thank you.
Maraming salamat, Senator Kiko. Yun lang mo, napakaraming tanong na talagang nagbabaga sa ating isipan. At talaga naman, alam natin na 7 million, yung tinatawag na deactivated, may na-anticipate pa na 4 million. Ngayon, ang katanungan, bakit kakarampot pa lang o 32.5% ng kanilang target ang nare-rehistro? Apakapayat nun, malapit-lapit na ito at alam ng lahat ng kandidato, October, filing na, parang umpisa na. So in the last hearing, the COMELEC explained to us that there's been constituted a task force to study and begin to prepare for the new normal, the first electoral process being next month, and that will be Palawan for their plebiscite in the division of the province. So let's call on the COMELEC to explain firstly how they're addressing these issues of registration in the new normal, the obstacles they face, and the data and information required by Senator Pangilinan. Who would like to respond from the COMELEC, please? I think Commissioner Mario Casquejo is here with us, and he has a full complement of staff.
Well, Madam Chair, good morning once again, honorable senators. I would Rector Elnas to the explanation or the presentation. Rector Elnas, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, please. Apo Elnas, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. With the permission of the Honorable Commissioner Casquejo, good morning, everybody. First and foremost, I would like to start from the period in which right after the 2019 national and local elections, wherein we had 61 million 61.8 million registered voters. And thereafter, when we prepared for the resumption of the continuing registration, Your Honors, Madam Chair, during the August ERB hearing, we were able to deactivate as many as 7, tama yung sinabi ni Senator Pangilinan, the Commission on Elections through the election registration boards during the August ERB hearing, we were able to deactivate as many as 7 million registration records due mainly to failure to vote twice. Okay. So along that line, bumaba tayo from 61 million to 54 million, 54.5 million. Then thereafter, we resumed the conduct of registration in preparation for the barangay and SK elections, wherein we registered 2.7 million for the regular voters and 2.9 million for SK voters who aging 15 to 17. And considering the fact that the barangay and SK elections scheduled for the 2020 May was postponed or rescheduled, we resumed, the Commission on Elections resumed the conduct of registration from January up to March, wherein we were able to register as many as 464,066 new voters. But unfortunately, middle of March, nagkaka-COVID tayo, nagka-lockdown tayo. So the Commission on Elections suspended the conduct of registration. And thereafter, we resumed the conduct of registration on September 2020, but with some restrictions because of the COVID pandemic. So though we resumed the conduct of registration, we limited the number of registration hours, and also we limited the number of registration days in a week. So making it registration from 8 o'clock only and up to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And we have that disinfection day every week, which is Friday. Along that line, there were some areas where in which they were not able to conduct the registration outright because of some reasons, because there were some localized lockdown. The office of the election officers were locked down due to the presence of COVID cases in the area and some other factors. So with that, we were able from September up to January, despite the slowdown of our registration because of, one, the pandemic situation, a restriction as far as the travel of the applicants for registration as well as personnel of the Commission on Elections. Second, yung mga localized lockdown, bigla na lang magsasara ang opisina, ang munisipyo dahil mayroong COVID cases na reported. And of course, yung fear ng mga tao na pupunta sa opisina, lalabas, pupunta sa opisina ng Commission on Elections para magparehistro. Added to the fact that those minors at the time were not allowed to go out and register. So on that line, despite the situation, we were able to register as many as 1.3 million from the period of September up to January ERB hearing, Your Honors. Okay? So, while it is true that we are targeting 4 million for the first-time voters, be it remembered that those already registered as SK voters during the supposedly barangay elections, there were 1.6 of them. Etong nakarehistro na as SK voters aging 15 to 17, they don't have to go to the office of the election officers and file their application for registration as regular voters, but instead, their names will be automatically extracted from the SK database and transferred to the regular database. So on top of the 4 million expected applicants for registration for 2022 national and local elections, mayroon na tayong 1.6 million who will be 18 this coming 2022 na i-extract na lang natin yan without them having to troop into the office of the election officer to file their registration. So automatic na yan, although i-submit sa ERB hearing and approval. So that's 1.6 million plus yung current natin na registration output from September to January, which is 1.3 million. So konti na lang na chunk ito for the remaining days of our registration, Your Honor. Ang isang challenge lang dito is yung mga na-deactivate natin na 7 million registration records. I conservative estimate na sa mga 3 million ang babalik to file for reactivation. And so far, ang nag-file pa lang ng reactivation from the period of January last year up to January this year, nasa mga 200,000 pa lang. So medyo malaki-laki pa ang bubunuin namin. But on that note, our efforts to increase the registration, because basically and normally, even during the times na wala pang COVID pandemic situation, ang attitude ng mga tao is hindi pupunta sa registration centers natin, sa mga opisina ng COMELEC natin, kung malayo pa ang deadline. So what we're doing now is we directed our field officials, our election officers to conduct satellite registrations. Lumalabas sila, pumupunta sila sa barangays, pupuntahan talaga yung mga tao parang magpaparehistro. And these are captured registrants natin. Kasi minsan may mga opisina tayo, kahit open yung opisina natin for registration, nilalangaw ang opisina natin, walang pumupunta. So one efforts natin is i-enhance itong satellite registration.
Sa probinsya?
So registration sa mga barangays, registration sa mga commercial establishments kung saan dinadagsa o pinupuntahan ng mga tao. At present, mayroon tayong partnership with Robinsons Mall for the conduct of satellite registration buong Pilipinas, no? Kung saan may mga Robinsons Malls. Also, in-increase natin yung number of days. Mayroon na tayong Saturday wherein which yung mga tao na nagtrabaho from Monday to Friday, they will have the opportunity to go to the office of the election officer and file their registration application. Also, in place is the iRehistro. For convenience on the part of those who will apply, mag-o-online lang for scheduling. Then after that, pupunta lang sa mga scheduled dates kung anong gusto nila. Okay? Then also we have partnership with youth-oriented groups. We conducted the Waka Waka we will be conducting Waka Waka on February 22. That is spearheaded by the Education and Information Department of the Commission. YouTube Voter Education Central. We have the Radyo COMELEC sa Quarantalk on online live weekly show in COMELEC FB. Then we also launched the infomercial, Magparehistro Ka Online, and other public awareness events. And this has been also replicated as far as the field offices is concerned sa mga cities and municipalities natin. So ongoing efforts natin
just to clarify,
and to
Apo Elnas, just to clarify,
Yes, ma'am.
yes, I just like to clarify. Ang sabi ninyo, 1.6 million automatically will be registered.
Yes, ma'am.
1.3 million have availed of new registration. So
Yes,
may
ma'am.
total ka ng 2.9 million ngayon.
Yes, ma'am.
So ano yung target natin? Maliban pa dun sa 2.9, hindi naman natin hinahabol yung total deactivated 7 million, ano? At saka yung
Yeah.
new voters. What is your projected?
per data from the National Statistics Office, Your Honor, Madam Chair, the expected persons na mag-18 by 2022 national and local elections is 4 million. So yung 4 million na yan, ima-minus na natin yung 1.3 na actual na at na-approve na nagparehistro. And of course, yung 1.6 million natin na ready for extraction.
Yes, that's right. Pero may kulang ka pa, no? May 1.1
Yes,
kulang
ma'am.
ka pa.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yung balance mo dyan sa new voters is 1.1 million. Doon sa deactivated na 7 million, wala ka na bang maibabalik dyan?
We are expecting, Your Honors, Madam Chair, conservative na estimate na sa mga 3 million pa ang babalik dyan to file for reactivation, which as of now, mayroon tayong around 200,000 na bumalik na at nag-file na ng reactivation. So yun yung mga target natin, ma'am, yung na-deactivate. We've been sending notices to them for them to file their reactivation.
Okay, so your working number is 4.1 million pa hanggang October. Tama? I see Senator Kiko raising his hand.
Yes, thank you. Just to clarify that in connection with the points raised by the chairperson, sabi ninyo 52 million ang registered voters sa ngayon. Tama po ba yun? Kasi na-deactivate, after deactivating yung 7. Tama? 52 million registered voters. Naka-mute
Ang
ata.
narinig ko, 54.5. Tama ba? Alin lang?
Sorry po. Nasa
Okay.
as of January ERB hearing, Your Honor, nasa 58,204,224 na ang registered voters natin.
Okay, so 58 million registered voters. It used to be 62. Tama po ba yun?
61 po.
61. Okay, so 61.
Almost.
So now 58. These are the registered voters. But what does PSA say in terms of your breakdown of ages should be the actual estimated or the estimated registered voters?
Meron ka?
Di ba?
Meron.
Ano ang population ng ating bansa na 18 years old and above? Pretty much, that's the question.
Can we may I refer you to the Director
Yes, please.
of the Election Records and Statistics Department,
Yes,
Your
please.
Honor?
Go ahead.
Mayroon tayo dyan ba?
Yes, who's going to answer?
Madam Chairperson, habang iniintay natin, meron kasi kaming mga figures that if you are to get the universe of the population of 18-year-olds and above, meaning all eligible voters, kulang-kulang mga 15 million ata ang hindi rehistrado. Parang ganun ang I just want that confirmed na merong 15 milyones na eligible voters na hindi rehistrado. So that we know, no, yung youth and other precisely kung 15 million yan and you want to get let's say 80% of that, and that's why we want the figures.
Good morning, Your Honors.
Yes, good morning.
Madam Chair, with the permission of Commissioner Marlon, based on the 2022 PSA projected population, the voting population is 73,376,201.
So, yun na nga. 73 million ang 18 years old and above. 58 million ang rehistrado. So, ang hinahanap nating hindi rehistrado ay 15 million. More or less. Tama? 58. Tama? 73 less 58. Di ba?
Naman.
Yun. So, yan ang nasaan yan. Di ba? Tapos, doon sa 15M na yon, kalahati na deactivate. Ibig sabihin, hindi nakapag-boto ng 2 beses, hindi ba? Na sana, kung hindi sila na-deactivate, although of course that is the law, sana 7 million na lang ang hahabulin ninyo na magre-rehistro, no? But and that maybe, at some point we might have to review yung 2 beses hindi nagpaparehistro, no? O hindi nagbumoboto. Baka dapat taasan pa natin, baka dapat 3 beses. I don't know. Kasi at one di ba? At one instance, you have deregistered, no? 15 million because of the law. I mean, 50% of your unregistered voters was because they didn't vote twice, not because they were not registered. So maybe we have to review that. But having said that, so now we know the universe of unregistered 18-year-olds would be around 15 million. So my question therefore later on would be, what will we do? What are the targets? How, what are your projections in terms of how many you will be able to register? How many are we registering today on a daily basis? At pagka pinoject natin yun, tatama ba tayo nung magandang numero o karapot lang? I will...
Sorry. Following on Senator Pangilinan's question and information that in fact there's a 15 million balance, bakit yung working balance natin ngayon sa COMELEC ay yung sinabi ni Director Elnas na 4.1 million lamang? Maliit yun kesa sa 15. So sabihin natin, may 2.9 already registered, pagkatapos may 3 million sa deactivated. Ang sinasabi ninyo, 4.1 million lamang ang balanse. When in fact, parang mas malaki di hamak yung sinasabi ng PSA. Maybe Director Elnas and Director Esther, I cannot see your name completely.
Madam Chair, if I may, with permission of Marlon, the 4 million is based on the data of the expected persons who will turn 18 by 2022 after the 2019 elections. Kasi po yung talagang...
Hindi. Yung sinasabi ko, yung mga working targets po natin, napakababa kung ihahambing sa universe of 15 million na sinasaad ni Senator Pangilinan. Kasi ang sinasabi natin, nakapag-rehistro na tayo ng 2.9 million, yung automatic na yon at saka yung bagong register, nasa 2.9 million lang yon. At ang tinuturing balance natin, yung remaining 1.1 million plus the 3 million from the deactivated, which totals of 4.1 million as the working target. Napakababa naman ng 4.1 million.
Maybe our commissioner can respond because this is a matter of policy also, and
If I may, Chair.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, please, Mr. Commissioner.
Well, Madam Chair, senators, the 4.1 million is based on the expected population who will turn 18. So this would burst out. So yes, the 7 million were deactivated because of failure to vote twice. They are already in our record. All they have to do is apply for reactivation. So that will be that part of our target because they are already part of the in our. However, they were just deactivated because they failed to vote in 2 consecutive elections. And maybe
So, Commissioner, you're saying doon sa 15 million, tanggal na muna yung 4 million out of the 7. So tanggal na muna yung 4. So yung working target would be 11 million. Out of the 11 million, tatanggalin natin yung 2.9. Diba? Kasi yung 2.9, rehistrado na yun, tapos na boxing dyan, in effect. Tama po ba? So that's another 7.1 million remaining. So our balance by definition should be 7.1 and not 4.1. Is that correct?
7.1 that includes those who were deactivated that they are expecting na babalik sila.
Madam Chair, just a clarification, ma'am.
I'm sorry. Yes?
Yes, thank you. Just to clarify, yung 4.1 million, these are the first-time voters. Yung will turn 18, tama? So yun yung tina-target.
That is the PSA projection for 18 new
Yes,
voters.
4.1. And then, on top of, so imenos na natin yung 1.6 na SK, sabi ninyo, kasi nga, yan, i-extract na lang ninyo, okay? At tatanggalin pa ninyo yung nagrehistro na first-time voters ng 1.3. Tama?
Yep.
So, lumalabas, 1.1 million na lang dun sa 4.1 ang first-time voters based on PSA data na hindi pa rehistrado. So, yan ang target ninyong 1.1. Now, 15 million yung sinasabi ng PSA ang ages 18 years old and above na hindi rehistrado. Di ba? Kasi 73 million ang buong universe ng eligible voters, 18-year-olds and above, and then 58 million lang ang rehistrado. So meron kang 15 million 18 years old and above na hindi rehistrado. Tama? Yun ang target. Di
No,
ba?
I think the 15 million, Senator Pangilinan, with all due respect, the 15 million refers yata, from my understanding kay Director Esther, ito yung eligible but not registered.
Yes, sorry, clarification.
Hindi sila lahat bagong botante.
In other words, dadagdagan mo pa ng 1.1 million na registered, na non-registered to be 18, tama? By 2022. So you're looking really at a universe of 16.1 million who should register, ideally, di ba? Who are eligible for registration by May 2022 but are not. Di ba? Tama? Tama ba yan? So far, so good? So, that is the target in terms of, are we gonna hit 80% of that? Are we gonna hit 50% of that? Yun ang tinatanong natin. So, just to confirm, tama po ba yun? 16.1 M ang non-registered but eligible to vote by 2022 in terms of PSA and COMELEC data. Tama?
Perhaps we are not actually comparing apples to apples here, ano? Kasi yung 15 million, labo-labo yan for different reasons, ano?
Yes.
Tapos to add the 1.1 balance of deactivated, parang hindi rin siya nagpa-follow. Pero the point being that there's a huge gap between the working targets and the projected registered number versus what should be the total universe of voters. Yun ang problema.
And so, ma'am, if I may ask, what is the target of the COMELEC by September 20?
4.1 million. Yung
Yun na lang ang
balance
target?
Oo, yun na lang ang target. 1.1 million balance doon sa 4 million na new voters, tapos 3 million yung maibabalik from the 7 million deactivated. Tama po ba yun? Apo Elnas, tama ba yung pagkadinig ko?
Yes po, ma'am. Tama yun, ma'am. Of the 7 million deactivated voters, we are conservative estimate is 3 million ang babalik to file for reactivation. Then we have this 4 million na first-time voters, and along that line, mayroon na tayong 1.3 na na-rehistro na and 1.6 na for extraction. So, roughly mga 1.6 million, mga 1 million na lang yung tatargetin natin, ma'am, up to the end of the registration period, which is September, ma'am.
Which is why, and that's the question raised by the chairperson, bakit ganun lang ang halaga kung ang estima nga natin 15 million ang hindi pa rehistrado? Why are we just targeting 1 million? Hindi po ba?
Maybe while the COMELEC is trying to put together their numbers, we can also call the stakeholders like PPCRV, NAMPRE, Lente, Democracy Watch, Ideas, Centec. Do you have any input or recommendation with regard to the slow registration resolution of Senator Kiko? May maidadagdag po ba yung ating stakeholders?
If I may clarify,
Yes, please. Ms. Buena Obra. Which group do you represent po?
PPCRV po. Okay, magandang umaga po. Thank you for the opportunity to clarify. I'd like to find out, just to clarify, there are overseas Filipino workers who I understand from Dole, about 500,000, who have returned because of the pandemic. Are they included in the statistics? Will they be included in the 7 million deactivated voters, for example? Will they be allowed to re-register so that they can vote, considering that it's going to be about just a year before elections? Baka hindi po sila makalabas ng bansa, pwede po ba silang maisama? Yan lang po ang tanong na gusto kong po mag-clarify. Salamat po.
If I may add, nung nakaraang meeting namin, pinag-usapan nga yung mga OFW, higit sa lahat yung mga seamen, na nagre-request na kung maaari, mag-rehistro sila na online, by mail, or sa iba pang paraan kasi hindi na nga nila kaya. Pagkatapos, yung mga repatriated OFWs na narito sa Pilipinas, nalilito sila kasi kung magre-rehistro sila sa Pilipinas, pagkatapos biglang ma-deploy sila sa abroad na siyang kagustuhan nila, disqualified naman sila bumoto sa ibang lugar. So, there were those questions that you rightly pointed out last time. Perhaps we call on COMELEC to address these issues that have probably contributed to the slow registration as well. Kasama na po ba yung OFW dyan sa COMELEC, please?
Madam Chair, yung 15 million as according to PSA, that includes also the OFWs. Kasi marami din naman kasi mga OFWs na mahirapan talaga sila magparehistro. So even if we get the data from the DOLE, sinasabi ni Senator Drilon, there are about 15 million overseas workers. So maybe we can look also into the registration, the continuing registration that will allow registration through online or let us say filing of application online, kasi naging problema kasi because malalayo yung mga kanilang post, so they cannot go to the post to personally file for application. So those are situations na medyo nahihirapan yung ating overseas o yung ating office registration. So
Yes, Commissioner,
yes.
maaari po ba o kailangan ng batas yung international registration na hinihiling ng ating mga OFW, yung mga repatriated, kasi hindi nila malaman kung saan sila maglalanding by May 2021. Kung swertihin sila at ma-deploy ulit, abay nasa abroad, nakarehistro sa probinsya dito.
Yes.
Hindi nila malaman kung pwede daw yung international.
Ganun din ang naging issue dito, Madam Chair, because once they return their registration in the Philippines, yung kanilang registration abroad will be cancelled. So,
That's right.
the transfer. Kapag nag-deploy sila on election day, they are disqualified.
Madam Chair, if I may
Pero
interject.
yung mga seamen, malaking problema. Yes, Senator Francis
Yes.
was with me during the January hearing
Yes.
when this was discussed. Yes,
Yes,
Senator
I
Tolentino,
I
please.
think, Madam, with due respect to the Commissioner, I think I was the one who raised that issue during the previous
That's right.
hearing. It's not just the question of how to register, but ultimately the question is how and where to vote insofar as the seafarers are concerned. nasa laot sila eh. 6 months ang kontrata ng seaman, yun ang 6 months book nila. Kahit nakarating sila sa, if I can remember correctly, my example was Rotterdam. Even if they reach the port of Rotterdam, they have to travel to The Hague to go to the embassy and vote. So the rest of the story goes that way. So it's the manner of voting perhaps, not just the registration. Just an input, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Yes, that's right. That was brought out very, very clearly in the last hearing and probably answers some part of the question of Senator Pangilinan na pagkarami-rami talagang hindi nakakaboto. Kung mababa yung local registration, di hamak na mas kakarampot talaga yung OFW.
Ma'am, if I just may...
Yes, Senator Pangilinan, please.
Hindi pa nasasagot yung tanong natin na 15 or 16
Oo naman,
million
babalik tayo doon. Kailangan, may ulang pa sila.
ang eligible to register but are not registered. Malaking bagay po ito dahil tandaan po natin nung May 2016 elections for the President, 16 million ang botante na bumoto kay Presidente Duterte. So itong 15 million na to ay hindi birong numero ito. The presidency and the Senate, composition of the Senate, the composition of the House will all depend or can very well depend on if we are able to register or not more of those who are not registered. Hindi po ba?
Yes, that's right. And as any OFW will tell you, sa hirap ng inaabot nila sa abroad, sa dami ng perang pinapadala dito, wala nang iba pang may stake sa kinabukasan ng Pilipinas kundi yung OFW nga naman.
So, pwede hong ma-clarify?
May we hear from the COMELEC once again and inquire if the working numbers are aligned with the PSA data.
It's important to know that, Madam Chairperson, with your permission, because, if it's 15 million, how many a day should we be registering to get, even just half of that? Diba? In September 30. This will also be, basis to say whether or not the COMELEC will decide, is should we extend the deadline for another month, for example? I mean, these are critical
Ano
questions.
yung deadline natin ngayon para sa registration?
September 30.
Yan na yung final deadline natin?
Yes, ma'am. Yun ang so far. But, that's why nga, we need to know the numbers so that we need to know if we're actually nakatuon pa sa datos at sa... Kasi kung sinasabi natin 4.1 million lang ang target natin bagong magre-rehistro for the youth, 3 million yung mare-reactivate, di ba? Kulang pa rin. That's why we want to know what the COMELEC's position is in terms of what we feel, and the chairperson has also observed, is a low target.
Anyone from COMELEC can respond, please?
Well, Madam Chair, Honorable Senator, we will look into that. I will raise that in the NBank meeting this next week, Wednesday, to align with the PSA's expected number of registered, eligible but not registered voters. Because it's going to consider also those overseas voters who were repatriated, on how we're going to treat them if they can still vote as overseas, even if they are in the Philippines, or they really need to transfer their registration so that they can vote in their localities. So we will raise that, Madam Chair, Honorable Senator.
Okay, we will await the information from your side, but in the meantime, perhaps more constructively, are there any solutions that we can recommend at this juncture? Already, Senator Pangilinan has said that we could probably extend the September 30 date. Is that doable given that filing for candidacy will occur in October po?
Well, Madam Chair, when it comes to the extension of the registration, there will be a tight schedule of our timelines because going to cluster those precincts into how many things for the preparation of the next stage of our AES components, Madam Chair. So I think the
I understand, Mr. Commissioner, there's really not much wiggle room between September 30th and October. What else can we do? Because Director Elnas already told us na nasa broadcast na kayo, naka-online na kayo, nakipag-partner na kayo sa mga youth group, nag-i-rehistro na kayo with Robinsons at kung saan-saan pang mobile satellite areas. Ano pang magagawa natin? Siguro yun nga, i-explore yung seamen and OFW, kausapin yung repatriated, kung anong maaaring gawin, at any other suggestions from stakeholders, COMELEC, and our senators, please?
Ma'am, just a clarification. Are we saying that the September... Yes, thank you. Are we saying that the September 30 deadline is non-negotiable? If we're saying, what about an extension of 30 or 45 days or 60 days? It will also help in terms of voter education and awareness if you extend it. Bakit? Kasi yung filing October 15 eh. So pag nag-file na at nalaman na nung botante, uy, filing na pala. Ay, teka, hindi pa ako rehistrado. Diba? In other words, here we are trying to come up with information dissemination campaign so that people will register. Your biggest information dissemination campaign is when the candidates start filing. Because doon na ngayon magkakaroon ng greater awareness, hindi mo na kailangan ng gumastos di ba? Para ikampanya yun dahil that in itself.
Excited na tao eh.
Yes. Uy, nag-filing na. Teka, magrehistro na tayo. So if it's just a matter of 30 days extension or 45 days extension, I think the COMELEC should consider this. Because precisely you have 15 million estimated who are not registered. So every step at getting them to register should be taken into consideration. And we hope that the September 30 deadline, considering the number of those who have not registered, the number that we have deactivated, that's the least we can do. Accommodate, di ba? More time to register.
Commissioner Casquejo, kailangan po ba ma-finalize yung voters list bago magkaroon ng filing? O pwede namang habulin pagkatapos kasi boboto pa sa Mayo?
Not necessary, Madam Chair. The filing is not dependent on the voters. But what naging effect is the type schedule of our configuration of the machines and location for the 2022 entity kung ilang clustered precincts yung natin affected dito. So, but then again, we are not closing doors, Madam Chair. What I'm saying is it will be a very, very tight schedule for us in our time. So, ang daming apektado from the configuration, from everything, and so on and so forth. But then again, we will look into that situation, Madam Chair.
Tama po yun. We understand completely the exigencies of COVID and all the problems that have ensued from it. At step 1 pa lang to, yung botohan, isa pang drama yun. Yung campaign, isa pa yun. Marami po talagang problema itong kampanya at halalan sa panahon ng pandemya. So, Erica Alvia, I think, is raising his hand. Eric, please.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, yes, may we also be clarified as to if COMELEC would allow the public to be made aware of the 7 million who have been delisted from the list. So at least the public will be made aware if he or she is still part of the list. That's one. Then another would be also, yeah.
That's a good
The
start.
second one, ma'am, would be, yeah.
Are those lists available in the COMELEC offices right now? Are they made public, as Erica said?
Yes, Madam Chair. It's posted in our bulletin boards of HOVOs. And even during ERB hearing, they were notified that they were deactivated.
Okay.
Madam Chair, can it be made online also?
Yes, we will do that.
Madam Chair, just on that point,
Yes, please.
Yes, nabanggit ninyo na they just have to apply for reactivation. That means they still have to go physically, no, to the COMELEC and apply for reactivation. Tama po ba yan?
Yes, Madam Chair. Correct, Madam Chair, for verification whether or not that person really is the person who is applying for reactivation. But they don't do again the capturing of the biometrics and also the fingerprints unless they will change their signature.
Okay, so it's simpler.
Yes.
Simpler. Okay, sige. Maraming salamat. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Eric had another question, but he doesn't seem to be present anymore on my screen.
Ma'am, I'm still around. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I just turned off my video. I have connectivity issues.
Yeah,
The
you
second
had
one
another
would be,
question?
yes, ma'am. The second one would refer to the transferees also, because we know that, as mentioned already by Ms. Pinoobla, there are a lot of OAVs who have the potential to be voters. Now, in fact, most OAVs are eligible voters. But some of them have been repatriated, or another would be the issue of those who availed of the Balik Probinsya program. What about those transferees? Are they part already of the so-called 15 million cohort or the 7 million that has been discussed earlier? Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, perhaps the COMELEC can reply about the Balik Probinsya. I think the OFW and Seaman, Director Esther mentioned the 500,000 returned OFWs, kanina. Tapos yung napakarami pang ang abroad na talagang hindi naman makarehistro o makagalaw. Paano yung Balik Probinsya? Meron ba tayong datos nun?
With regards to that, Madam Chair, if the said person is already a registered voter in overseas or a registered voter that I've seen in Metro Manila and then he availed Balik Probinsya, then he is not included in the 50 million. But what he will do is he will apply for a transfer of registration.
So, simple lang dapat.
Yun yung target, Madam Chair. Kasi registered voter na siya.
That's right.
Registered voter, then he's included in the sinasabi ng PSA.
Just transfer of precinct na lamang.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Can the same thing apply to the OFWs na tantamount to transfer of precinct pero ibang bansa?
That is correct, Madam Chair.
So, okay, I think we'll have to hear from the COMELEC with a continuing question about lowballing our targets for registration and the possible solutions to the same. We have other things on our agenda. If Senator Kiko will allow, we'll move to the other bills unless there is more information. Yes, Senator Pangilinan, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairperson. Just a clarification on the an administrative matter. The matter of COVID-proof elections. We'd like to raise some concerns regarding this because I don't know if now is the right time based on the resolution, or do we tackle other maybe very quickly, ma'am, because we'd like to know that there is a March Palawan plebiscite.
That's right, next month.
And this could very well be a pilot testing of sorts of a COVID-free or COVID-resilient election process, hindi po ba?
That's right. That's why I mentioned earlier that at the last hearing, the COMELEC had already instituted a task force for the new normal. And I see Senator Pimentel raising his hand.
Yes. I will yield to Senator Pimentel.
Senator Kiko is done? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. This may be a repetition of what has already been said. But sorry, ma'am, kasi I also attended the Blue.
That's right. You were with us.
We are in PS Resolution 639, the slow progress of voters registration. So
Opo.
Ano ba, Comelec, nagpahirap ba ang IETF regulations? Bawal ba lumabas yung mga affected parties? Ngayon, if yes, by March siguro pag mag-MGCQ na tayo, siguro
Dapat ranchada na.
wala na yung reason na yan. Kaya ang next tanong ko, meron ba kayong go out and register media campaign? Kung malabo pa ngayon dahil sa IETF regulations, anticipate that by March, medyo more or less new normal na yan, where the below 18, the close to 18, can already go out. Implement po natin yung go out and register campaign if meron. Kaya yan tanong ko, meron ba?
Madam Chair.
Yes, please. Yes. Elnas. Yes, Director Elnas, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, as far as the restriction is concerned, while it is true na yung mga 60 above and yung mga 18 ay hindi, but at that time hindi pa pwedeng lumabas. Pero once nasa opisina namin sila, ang instructions namin to the election officer is for them to register, for them to receive the application for registration. So, yun ang namin, so yun ang policy natin. Then second is yung efforts natin, mayroon tayong efforts in place na one is yung satellite registration, pumupunta sa labas yung mga election officer natin sa mga barangay, conduct satellite registration, plus mayroon tayo ngayong March na gagawin with all massive information campaign na nagsasabi na lalabas itong mga tao na hindi pa nagparehistro at magparehistro sila. That's our campaign through the media, through social media, through the radio, etc. Enticing people who are not yet registered to register this coming March po.
So, tama-tama pala, tama-tama. You really have this all-out media plan campaign this coming March. Meron naman pala. So, very good. So, please stop. Meron akong mga narinig na marami ring volunteer groups na gusto kayong tulungan na non-partisan naman, mga neutral. Anyway, ang panawagan naman na magrehistro is a neutral political call, di ba? So itap, kung pwede, kung bukas ang isip ng COMELEC to also tap these groups. They may be political groups, but the call, di ba? Ang panawagan na magrehistro, ano yun neutral po yun. So sana po bukas ang isip ng COMELEC na magpatulong sa mga grupo na ito. Tama po ba yan?
Yes sir, tama yan sir. In fact, mayroon na kaming isang partnership with youth-oriented groups na pinapartner namin to enhance yung campaign natin na magpaparehistro yung mga tao. And also, our election officers are on the process of, or in coordination with the school administrators, mga local non-government organizations to assist and help us in our campaign na makakapagparehistro na lahat na hindi pa nagparehistro.
At saka, Madam Chair, ako kasi naka-experience na ako ng transfer of voter registration Na-experience ko na yan I was originally a Marikina voter and then pinatransfer ko sa Cagayan de Oro yan. Decades ago, napalipat ko na. Madali yung sistema. So I hope you have retained the very easy and convenient system. Ngayon, gawin nyo rin sanang madali ang sistema doon sa OFW na registered sa overseas voting system na lilipat ngayon sa normal voting system because kailangan dalawang is now yung transfer ko from Marikina to Cagayan de Oro, that's within the same voting system. But the transfer of someone from an overseas voting system to our regular voting system, the domestic voting system, iba yun. Transfer from system to system. So I hope i-review nyo rin yun at gawin nyo rin yung madali. Very easy. Katulad nung naranasan ko nung transfer ng aking And then yung mga na-deactivate na 7 million, gawin din sana nating madali din yung pag-reactivate. As tingin ko madali lang tayo unless may affidavit pang kailangan yun. Ano ba ang proseso doon?
At napakagulo Senator Pimentel, kasi alam ninyo, yung mga registered abroad, na-repatriate sa Pilipinas, tapos ano kung ma-deploy na naman sa abroad bago magmayo to? Yun ang pinoproblema nila eh.
Madam Chair.
Gawin lang nilang madali, Madam Chair, kasi na actually yung pag-transfer talaga madali yung transfer of precinct. Pero sana yung mga other situations na transfer, gawin din nilang madali. So yun lang po. Thank you Madam Chair.
Madam
Thank
Chair.
you, Director Nas, please. And I think Bondi wanted to speak. Senator Kiko, please.
Yes. Mauna ng muna sila, and then I'll raise my a few more questions. Just a few more questions. But mauna na, sige, I will give way.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Madam Chair. Third Chronicle from Ideals. In relation to what the Honorable Senator Pimentel raised earlier, Ideals also caters to the legal needs of the marginalized people. And may lumapit po sa amin from the seniors. They were asking if paano po sila magre-register considering na under the IAT guidelines, the persons above 65 are required to remain in their houses, except for when obtaining essential goods and services. Now, it was mentioned earlier by the COMELEC that they will entertain seniors, but perhaps it's not clear to them if ang registration po ba for voting ay isang i-count as essential service. Because when COMELEC started entertaining citizens for registration last year during September, nasa balita po na the Joint Task Force COVID Shield commander, in fact, discouraged minors and seniors to register for voting until the later part of the year, because in-anticipate po nila na hopefully by that time meron pong vaccine. So siguro po isa po sa mga nakadagdag dun sa konting pag-register ng vote is yung siguro hindi po malinaw sa mga seniors lalo na kailangan po na pwede naman po silang mag-register sa COVID, except that they are afraid of going out because of the ATF discouraging them. And of course, there's also the fear of the health concern fear na even if allowed sila, syempre takot pa rin po silang robust because of baka makontract po sila ng COVID. So may ganun pong concern na lumalabas.
I agree, Dondi, kasi to the credit of COMELEC, talaga naman na nag-effort na sila na i-disseminate yung information. Ngunit yun nga, takot ng tao lumabas kasi pinagbabawalan sa mga localized ECQ, mga IATF guidelines, so 60 and above, pati yung 18 years old and below, napakarami ng sakit yan. Kaya hindi talaga makapag-rehistro anuman ang energy na pinapakita ng COMELEC. Pero talagang pilitin pa rin natin. Senator Kiko, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairperson. Just a few more questions. Doon sa 1.6 million na i-extract from SK, do they have to do anything? Itong mga 15 to 17 who will turn 18 pagdating ng May 22 elections? This is yet to be approved, no? So hindi pa to official, tama po ba 'yon? And number two, kung ma-approve ito, do they also have to go to the COMELEC office to complete the extraction?
Yes, Director Elnas, please.
Etong mga mag-18 by 2022 national and local elections natin na registered na as SK voters, their names will be submitted pa rin sa ARB for approval and disapproval. Then they don't have to go to the office of the election officer po para may gagawin pa sila. All they have to do is wait para tapos ito-post din yung pangalan nila once approved or disapproved yung application nila.
What will be the criteria for approving or disapproving?
Basically, Your Honors, kung walang objection, matatanggap ang Election Registration Board, i-approve na ito kaagad. But may mga instances like may mga disqualification like hindi na siya citizen at the time when nagkaka-ERB hearing, so that will be a ground for disapproval. But generally, pag nandun ka na sa listahan, ang ng Election Registration Board is to approve it and notify na lang yung mga taong concerned.
When you say ERB, this is regional? Is this provincial?
By city and municipality yan, Your Honor. So each city and municipality, mayroon siyang Election Registration Board.
Okay. And the deadline for your extraction is when?
Per resolution, Your Honor, we started already the extraction. We will start the extraction by April ERB hearing, Your Honor.
Okay. And then that will be continuing until September 30. Tama po ba?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So, dapat alam ng mga kabataan siguro yan, kailangan na naman ng information drive, no? Sabihin nila, in-extract pala ako, hindi ko alam. Diba? So kailangan din yung information drive na yan. And that should be in coordination, I suppose, with the SK, no? And the National Youth Commission. The other quick question would be, well, the reason why we want to have those numbers, and maybe it can be submitted na lang po, Madam Chairperson, yung ano yung target ninyo of the 15 million, because we want to know the daily, ipoproject natin. Kasi kung 3 million voters, dati kino-compute ko, hanggang September 30, I think you need something like 80,000 a week, di ba? Of registrants for the 32 weeks. Parang ganon. So, if we're looking at a 7 million target or a 10 million target, titingnan natin, di ba? Ano kakailanganin gawin ng COMELEC para ma-absorb lahat yun? Dapat siguro magdagdagan yung satellite registration. Dapat siguro magkaroon ng tama yun, wag na ho sa opisina dahil yung iba natatakot pumunta sa opisina, mag-satellite na kayo, doon na kayo sa mga basketball court, doon na kayo sa, hindi po ba, sa mga convention center, sa mga gymnasium. And just a final manifestation, Madam Chairperson, number one, there is a option to extend the deadline. This will be discussed, no, by the COMELEC. They are not closing their doors to a possible extension of the deadline of September 30. Number two, they will go back to the drawing board, for lack of a better term, and consider reviewing or will review the targets of 4.1 million in light of, the PSA data that you actually have anything anywhere between 15, about 15 million 18-year-olds and above who are not registered. So the 4 million target for registration is a bit low. And number three, we really urge the establishment of satellite offices. Kung kulang ang tao po ninyo, now is the time to give them jobs. Dahil marami sa mga kababayan natin walang trabaho. Baka dapat kasama na sa tulong at suporta sa ating mga kababayan walang trabaho, kumuha tayo ng mga dagdag na personnel para dito sa mga kailangan gawin para ipaghandaan yung May 22 elections. We have no other questions, Madam Chairperson, on the resolution. We are thankful again for this opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Pangilinan. May I just quickly request, given that Senator Kiko has already requested some information, by way of assisting COMELEC towards a solution, meron ba kayong listahan? Sigurado may breakdown naman. Saan ba yung mga lugar na napakaraming na-deactivate na hindi nagsiboto nung dalawang huling halalan? Baka tutukan natin yan at magpasaklolo na rin tayo sa mga LGU dahil it's in their interest naman na talagang magrehistro ang karamihan ng botante. Meron ba kayong listahan kung saan karamihan yan? Island provinces ba yan? Barm ba yan? Saan ba yan? Na tutukan natin ang todo. Tapos nandiyan naman yung DBM, baka bigyan pa kayo ng konting pera para dyan, dun sa mga lugar na yon. And maybe you can make specific guidelines or somehow urge the personnel in the relevant offices where so much deactivation has occurred to ratchet up their efforts. Siguro may number naman kayo yan, Director Elnas, ano?
Yes, Madam Chair, we will submit the corresponding report on that down to municipal level, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Senator Tolentino. I think
Madam Chair.
I missed your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I transfer to another meeting, it appears from the conversation right now, that I can glean from the conversation, that what we're dealing with right now, the predicament, to really help the COMELEC, we're now dealing with the time, place, and manner of registration. All these propositions are being made. I just want to make this very, very clear, and I need an affirmance from the COMELEC that the requirements will be the same. Anybody from the COMELEC can answer. Will the requirements be the same while we adjust as to the time, manner, and place? The requirements will be the same. Anybody from the COMELEC? Hindi po magbabago yung requirements. Yung edad, yung tagal sa paninirahan sa lugar, at yung iba pa hong bagay. Tama po ba ako doon? Sino ang sasagot?
Yes, Madam Chair. Requirement is kasi nasa batas.
Nasa batas yan. One requirement you can cite, which is unchangeable, is the age.
Age requirement.
Yes. I'm saying this, Madam Chair, because right now, and I would like to hear, I would like to have all the resource persons present, especially the COMELEC, realize this. We're now on the brink of approving a new law, probably on next week, Monday or beyond, which would involve COVID-related incidents, especially a COVID passport. I would now like this to be placed on record that no additional requirements would be made, even if a new law is passed next week requiring COVID passports for those vaccinated, which is not compulsory. So, hindi po natin dapat marinig ito na mangyari sa iba't ibang probinsya, sa iba't ibang opisina. Hindi ka pwedeng pumasok dito sa aming kapitolyo, sa aming munisipyo, kasi wala kang COVID passport. Hindi ka pwede baka yung iba naman, hindi narinig, mali yung interpretation dun sa batas na lalabas, kailangan mo ng COVID passport bago ka mag-rehistro. Kasi kulang yung bakuna pa natin, hindi natin alam kung kailan matatapos yung supply. So, to be placed on records that if ever that new law will be passed and approved, that COVID passport will not be a requirement for registration. Is that I'm not supposed it's not clear to say it's that clear, but is that a proper assumption on the part of the COMELEC? That no new requirements will be made. What we're discussing is that the time, place, and manner. Salamat po, Madam Chair. Yes po yung sagot nila. Thank you, Commissioner.
That's an overwhelming yes. Hindi pwedeng baguhin ang batas. So, asymptomatic or nagpa-test or nagpa-vaccinate, kailangan hayaan bumoto. We will just take
Madam Chair,
Yes,
not even the swabbing requirements bago magparehistro, baka hingan pa ng certificate na na-swab na negative. Ganun po yan, di ba? At lalo-lalo na sa botohan. Wala rin naman requirements na may swab certificate ka. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And perhaps the next items on the agenda will somehow also respond to the questions of Senator Pangilinan earlier. What are we doing about the new normal with regard to elections? So, eto nga, andito yung ating dalawa pang bill na nakapending at siguro yung uunahin natin, yung enhancing accessibility in the voting of senior citizens. Ito yung kay Senator Angara. And sa palagay ko, wala naman tututol dito. It's accompanied by a House bill also regarding the designation of precincts with accessible polling places for PWD, seniors, pregnant women, and so on. Palagay ko maganda ito, sa opinion ko lamang, na i-include na rin natin ito doon sa early voting expansion. perhaps we can do this by way of a new provision clarifying the need for accessible polling places. For example, we can have senior citizens, persons with disabilities will have the option in early voting in designated precincts where the available facilities for said persons shall be provided. So I'd like to hear from COMELEC kung kakayanin ba natin gawin ito. This is with regard to Senate Bill 1866 and House Bill 6470, which have the same direction of providing venues with special access for PWD, seniors, pregnant women, and so on.
Yes, Madam Chair, request the DSO and Director Balangkit to answer the query, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you very much, Director Balangkit. Please, I've lost your video, but it seems you're still present.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon. With the kind permission of Honorable Commissioner Casquejo. Yes, ma'am. The law on accessible polling place is actually already in place. That's Republic Act 10366, and while there is no formal stand yet of the commission on this, but this is a welcome development because the vulnerable sectors will have an improved voting experience for them to vote in areas which are accessible to them. So currently, the law on accessible polling place for senior citizen and PWD is already in place and implemented, but only limited to public schools where the voting centers are located. But in this proposal, there are additional possible venues for registration, or rather for voting, taking into consideration the accessibility and the convenience issue for the PWD. And in addition, there is now the other vulnerable, the heavily pregnant, because it used to be the law only applies to senior citizen and PWD. So
Yes,
this is
yes.
yes, ma'am. So this is actually a welcome initiative for COMELEC insofar as the proposal for designating other venues other than the public schools.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Marlon and to Director Balangkit, what I was thinking was that this probably does not require a standalone bill, given that, as you said, RA 10366 already imposes this requirement that accessible polling places be established. Perhaps what we could do is, in as much as we are in the process of completing the committee report on early voting, doon sa early voting na siyang nagta-target rin ng the same group na senior citizens, PWD, and so on, yung expanded early voting natin na committee report, baka magdagdag na lang tayo ng accessible polling place, not necessarily na yung mga public school na sinasaad dati. Ano sa tingin nyo, para hindi masyadong magulo, i-limit natin sa early voting para sabay-sabay na, kasi parehong sectors ang ina-address eh.
Yes, ma'am. I believe so. That's reasonable and practical because that would definitely safeguard and protect our vulnerable sectors, and to their convenience, they will be voting not in together or within the general electorate in a crowd during election day.
Mahirapan din COMELEC mag-implement yan kasi parang may hiwalay na botohan yung mga seniors na halimbawa may rampa, may mga wheelchair access, samantalang yung maraming lumang eskwelahan, wala namang ganon. Will you be compelled in that case to conduct two? Or shall we just put this in early voting to make it immediately workable?
Well, ma'am, depende po sa voting system na i-adapt doon sa early voting. Which could be possibly be explored, no? Kasi yung early voting, ma'am, could be either a manual voting or an automated voting. So there are challenges in both, no? Although
Siguro yung manual will be easier for you at this juncture, no? Sa dami ng problema ng COMELEC na inaharap at sa dami ng adjustments na new normal, yung manual ata mas madali.
yes, ma'am, I agree. And in fact, in the COMELEC, in their stand on the bill in Congress of similar nature, their stand is manual, and even in the postal voting, it's manual. That could be doable for us, no? And if it is possible, their position is only on national positions. So early voting only on national positions and manual voting system.
Paano yun sa local? Only national. Paano sa local? Mas interesado sila sa local kung pinsan
Yeah, these are the challenges, ma'am, if we include the local, no? But yeah, the first on the procedural part of the implementation, ma'am, no? For instance,
pareho pa rin. Ang papahaba ng balota, yung party list, hindi po ba? Kahit manual yan, mahaba pa rin yung balota mo.
ma'am, when we say manual, we are referring to a manual ballot where the voters will have to write their
That's right. I see. It's manual voting, manual count, manual lahat.
Yes, ma'am. And so there are challenges about how to do the canvassing using, for instance, the Board of Canvassers using two systems: the automated canvassing system, and at the same time adopting a manual canvassing system that we used to have in the past. That there is presentation of the election return, there's objection, set aside. So there are challenges about the possible delay in the prosecution and on the proclamation, if ever we will include the local positions in the early voting for senior citizens and the other vulnerable sectors.
Okay.
I may add, Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Casquiao is going to call you.
Yes. The position of the Commission with regards to the early voting is that only for national positions will be voted. So, in the event that the accessible polling place on election day to those who wanted to vote for the local positions, they might as well not register as an early voting. So parang naging ganun, Madam Chair, we cannot remove the accessible polling place because there are other voters, senior citizens.
They're far more interested in the local sites.
Yes. We are going to pattern, but of course, it will be the Congress who will approve the law. But the stand of the Commission, if we apply, we implement the early voting, we will pattern this in a local absentee voting that only national positions and the party list positions will be voted.
How difficult would it be to include the local positions?
Well, Madam Chair, the operational side of that would be the difficult part if we include the local position because as we all know, yung ating voters, yung balota natin is already sealed at that time. So if we will implement an early voting, we have to remove the official ballots for the particular precincts because it's a precinct-specific official ballots. So if we allow local positions, so the operation difficulty will come in because kukunin pa yung balota mismo na nandun pa sa loob ng treasurer's office. let us say on a particular precincts, there are 5 senior citizens who availed for a early voting, we have to remove the 5 ballots to be filled up by the voters who availed for an early voting. And after that,
Can't they set those aside earlier on?
well,
Hindi na siya kasama doon sa sealed. There are 2 packets that will be sealed. Yung maramihan sa Treasurer's Office, tapos yung iilan na nag-manifest ng intent to vote early.
yes, that is possible, Madam Chair. Again, it's more on the operation side.
Yung hassle, ano?
Yes, of the hassle only, but then again, if there's a law that is passed by the Congress, then we will comply with that law.
Okay. I guess the same issues would arise with the mail-in, ano? I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the mail-in. There are very, very many people who are quite skeptical about postal voting. But I believe that the post office is here to defend their newly computerized system. May we call on the postal services, please? I believe you have a representative. Committee Secretary, please.
Engineer Zamudio po.
Yes, engineer. Joel Samudio. I see a space, but I'm not certain. Are you here, please? Is there anyone from the post office who can reply and explain to us? You wrote to me that you're capable of doing postal or mail-in ballots. Please explain, because as you know, the Senate President and many other officials are highly skeptical of our capacity to do the same.
Madam Chair,
Yes, please.
we already sent our position to your office.
Yes, your audio is coming in quite unclear. If you can come closer to your mic, please.
Clear na po, madam? Okay na po.
Much better, thank you.
Okay. Actually, we already had an experience in delivering election means from other countries like Spain, Austria, Romania, and France. We also had experience in overseas absentee voting with
Oo, ginagawa natin sa absentee voting yung postal, diba?
By 2022, we already have the infrastructure facilities to include computerized mail processing and tracking place to ensure that the ballots will be delivered on time and secured. We already have.
First time natin gawin to sa lokal. Iniisip ko lang, paano ba ginagawa yung local absentee voting? Mail-in rin ba yan?
I have a team coming from our international affairs already doing research, asking the help from US on how this is being done.
No, engineer, we're all aware that mail-in is being done for absentee overseas voting. Ang question ko, meron rin tayong local absentee voting. Mail-in rin ba yan? It's just a matter of information. Maybe someone from COMELEC can reply. Yung local absentee natin, postal service din ba ginagamit?
If I may.
Yes, anybody from COMELEC? Paano nga ba yung local? Yung local absentee? Yes, please. Anyone from
Yes,
COMELEC,
yes.
please?
With the confirmation of Commissioner.
Yes. Okay. Director Balingkit.
Ma'am, yung local absentee voting natin is personal po siya, no? Personal siya. Normally, it's in the, for example, if it is in the camps, it's one of the areas or classrooms in a camp, no? For media, for instance, in NCR, it's in the regional office. In some other areas, in the provincial office. So this is as an in-person voting.
It's not absentee at all.
Yes, ma'am. In person, but absentee in the sense that they will not be voting in the place that they are registered voter.
That's why it's a complete misnomer, actually. It's local.
Yes, ma'am. It's actually similar to an election day process, but they would not be voting in their voting center in the barangay or city where they are registered voter, but they will be voting in a particular place where they are working or performing election duty on election day.
Do they vote on the same day?
No, ma'am. Normally, yeah,
Earlier,
there
di
are
ba?
earlier, ma'am. Earlier. 3 days before, 3 days of voting for local absentee voters.
So there's really no postal service involved. They still have to go there in person. Ang COMELEC lang mahihirapan at magse-set up kayo ng, kumbaga, hiwalay na presinto sa ibang lugar.
Yes, ma'am. Bali, kung saan sila nagtatrabaho, kung PNP siya or FFP,
Correct.
or saan siya naka-assign on election day, kahit naka-assign, kahit nakarehistro siya sa ibang probinsya, there is this convenience of still allowing to participate in the election but only for national positions by going to that place, by going to any.
I've actually seen that. That's why I was baffled by the continued use of the term local absentee. Samantalang nakikita ko naman sila, yung mga sundalo at pulis na ma-assign ng COMELEC sa araw na yon, abay bumoboto naman sila in person, kaya ako nalilito. Thank you. Let's go back to Engineer Samudjo pa. Yes, the Postal Service, sabi ninyo, kaya ninyo. Kasi computerized na po kayo. Kaya
Yes.
sa lokal, you're already doing it abroad, about the local.
I think the COMELEC, wala pa kasing, there's no guidelines yet on how it is being done locally. So, in terms of the voting, kasi we might add additional, we might request additional support from the government because we might hire additional personnel to support this mail-in voting.
Yes, of course. It's a whole new it's a whole new effort. So you'll probably need a logistics and personnel complement that's also entirely new. Ngayon, Commissioner Casquejo at yung mga taga-COMELEC, nabanggit na yata ni Commissioner Guanzon, pati si spokesperson Jimenez, nabanggit na yata nila na po pwede siguro kung i-pilot lamang. Kasi nga, first time natin sumubok ng ganito. Is that something that we can actually do? Kung saan sabihin natin, yung Postal Service at yung COMELEC have agreed that these are areas where the Postal Service is pinaka-efficient, pinaka-reliable, at matututukan, doon lang tayo magpa-pilot. Halimbawa, pwede ba kaya yun? Kasi that's what we also did with automated, di ba? We chose the farm election as the pilot.
Yes, Madam Chair, with the passage of the law, we can do a pilot test with regards to that mail-in voting. So all we need is the assurance from the postal office that on the ballot will arrive not later than election, on the return of the ballot. Kasi baka doon tayo magkakaroon ng problema, tapos ng election, then here comes the mail-in ballot. Mga ganun na issues. But I think the postal office naman is very competent and well because of their computerization. Kaya naman nila. Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Casquejo. Sa postal office, kompleto na ba yung computerization effort ninyo?
We are enhancing our current track and trace system, and we expect that the full computerization will be done this year. Ang schedule namin is it will be implemented by April or May, and we are sure that by 2020 all of the systems are mature already.
I see. So April, May, more or less, kompleto na kayo this year. So by next year, you've had 1 year of practice, ika nga, to fine-tune the setup in the event that we actually get this done.
And we support the position that recommendation that it will be done on a pilot test basis, and we can work closely with government to discuss these areas which we can implement the.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Are there any further comments from our stakeholders, Manfred, BBC, RB, Lente, and the other NGOs on either of these two bills? Yes, please, Ms. Buena Obra.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Perhaps, if I may suggest, the retrieval of the ballot is not an issue, and we are sure that the Philippine Postal Service is able to do that. They have competence. I think what is important would be who will authenticate the identity of the voter. For example, they will be mailing their ballots, so perhaps the identity of the voter at the onset, at the beginning, should also be part of the guidelines. But if it's going to be pilot tested, I think that can be done.
Any ideas how that should be done? How do we verify ID? Via mail. I have no idea. Kayo, sa postal service, I think that's very cogent and necessary.
For the post, we have the postal ID. We usually ask for that as a validation.
Ano yun? Ano yung postal ID?
It's actually considered as a government ID also. We are the post is issuing it. May QR code na rin siya to verify if in case using mobile devices, it can be verified din siya talaga yun.
I see.
And if
but if you had the codes, it can be accessed by more than one person, right? I mean, like yung lola magpapatulong sa anak kasi hindi niya sanay yung QR code. Maring yung anak ang boboto at hindi yung lola.
That's a possibility po kasi pwede namang ibigay yung cellphone doon sa kwanto. Medyo.
Siyempre, yun din ang problema kasi natin ngayong quarantine, di ba? May mga QR code pero hirap tayo sa paggagamit. Sige. Okay. Understood. May postal ID pala. Okay.
Ma'am?
Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
Madam Chair,
Director Elnas, and I'm not certain. Was it a Helen? I don't have
Yes, Madam Chair.
That's my problem. Sorry.
I request to be recognized. I'm
Yes.
Attorney Helen Galdo from the Legal Network for Truthful Elections. I want
Okay,
just a
pero
comment
I'm sorry, Director Elnas was recognized ahead of you. Let's allow Director Elnas and then please follow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dito lang sa yung sinabi kanina ng postal post office, yung requirements ng for purposes of identity, establishing the identity of the voter, yung requirement na yung postal ID ang kukunin as a requirement for establishing the identity. Baka magka-problema tayo dyan dahil unang-una, if I remember it right, for one to avail of the postal ID, mayroong financial consideration yan, hindi libre. So it would tantamount to a financial requirement before one can exercise or exercise his right to vote. So if that's the case, yun ang concern lang natin dyan, ma'am.
Ano yung financial requirement, Engineer Sampudyo?
Basically, they have to pay and apply for the postal ID.
How much is it?
I think it's how much? I think it's 500.
Ay, malaki din.
Yes, po. But we can use the SSS or the SIS or any government issued ID as
Pwede rin.
pwede rin po. Even kung meron siya ng pabalik yung voter's ID
Voter's ID.
Yes. Pwede rin po yun.
Okay. Yes, Director Elnas, and then we'll go to Helen.
Thank you, ma'am. I think yung magiging template natin dito, ma'am, yung sa postal voting ng overseas, wherein once ma-establish na natin na doon siya nakatira, andun yung botante nakatira, pinapadala na natin. Or per records, registration records ng botante, kung ano yung address, doon natin pinapadala. For purposes, yun ang mahirap lang talaga sa postal voting because you don't have the process of identification unlike doon sa personal voting So medyo mahirap yung i-stress or emphasize natin yung identity before the ballots will be received, etc. Medyo mahirapan tayo. So ang postal voting natin sa overseas, it's enough na yung registration records natin, andun yung address, doon natin pinapadala yung balota.
Pero sa kaso ng lokal, baka kailangan istriktuhan ng toto, hindi po pwedeng ganun kaluwag. Yes, Helen Graido.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Have a visual, please. You have a visual because I am getting very confused. Sorry. Meron kayong visual? Kasi audio lang Ayun pala eh.
There, okay. So, just to comment on the accessible polling places, I think very important is on the manner or the level of implementation as for these polling places. Because we would like to recommend for COMELEC to go back to how the emergency accessible polling places was implemented and how successful it was, and what were the challenges before no 2019. Kasi ma'am, just to inform the committee, in 2019, nag-implement po ang COMELEC ng EAPP. So these are designated or rooms or designated polling places for senior citizens, for heavily pregnant, and for persons with disability. So sila hindi actually kailangan mag-register to be recognized as part of the vulnerable sector, but they can actually just go straight to that room to avail of the benefits of the emergency accessible polling places. Pero kami, as an election monitoring organization, marami pong nakitang problema sa pag-i-implement kasi nangyari po minsan kasi kailangan po yung balota dadalhin mula sa taas papunta sa baba, doon sa EAPP. Doon po nagkakaroon ng miscoordination. Hindi po minsan alam ng mga presinto sa taas na meron palang EAPP. Kasi importante po sa mga ganitong panukala is babalikan yung ano po ba yung kailangan or concern ng mga botante mismo. Kasi sa totoo lang yung pagpaparegister bilang isang person with disability or isang senior citizen, hurdle na po yun. Kaya po actually it was a welcome direction yung pagkakaroon ng EAPP kasi hindi po nila kailangan mag-register pa ng additional information to avail of the benefits. Pero since nag-pilot pa lang yun, siguro very important po na balikan din kung ano po yung mga challenges na hinarap ng COMELEC nung in-implement po nila yon ng 2019. Tapos on the mail-in voting naman, we are very progress on the fact na the success of mail-in voting is very much dependent on the integrity of the postal system of the country. It's deemed successful in other countries, in other localities kasi matagal na pong establish yung kanilang mga postal system and they really trust it really well kasi as in to the fact na, I mean, if you've tried living abroad, you can actually send money through post mail. But that we have to achieve first before we go into exploring post-in voting, mail-in voting. Kasi po, very important na pa rin naman po yung mga balota na mag-go through that system. So there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. But it's an Ilocano tradition to send pauwit through the mail. Sa totoo lang, naglalagay sila ng mga dollar nakaipit. As you said, we're not certain that it's always received at the other end, but we've certainly tried it. Thank you very much. Is there any other comment? Maybe COMELEC can answer with regard to the question of implementation. Kasi kung minsan we're full of good intentions nga, pero sa enforcement, sa implementation, talagang nagkukulang tayo. And she made reference to the 2019 emergency polling places. Anyone who was involved in the COMELEC with what was mentioned?
Madam Chair?
Sino pa? Commissioner Casquel, please.
Madam Chair, that is correct, Madam Chair. In 2019, we implemented emergency accessible polling place. Even before that, meron na po tayo in barangay elections, 2017, the emergency accessible polling place. However, in 2019, we implemented nationwide. Nagkaroon lang po tayo ng problema doon, Madam Chair, because it was implemented late only, yung preparations natin, because in the emergency accessible polling place, there is no vote counting machine. So ang gagawin doon is kapag may dumating na senior citizen or heavily pregnant or PWDs, may option siya is to go to the presinto mismo kung saan siya na-rehistro. Or kung yung presinto niya is nasa itaas o malayo, he can go directly to the EAPP without registering. So what the electoral boards of that is, again, yung mga senior citizen kasi gustong-gusto nila na sila mismo yung susubo doon sa BCM. So that is why yung iba hindi na pupunta doon, hindi na papasok doon kasi kaya naman nilang umakyat or lumakad papunta doon sa sa isang presinto kung saan sila na-rehistro. So what we are trying to think or to implement or plan is baka pwedeng lagyan natin ng BCM para yung ating EAPP natin is yung ating mga senior citizens who want na sila talaga mismo yung susubo, posibleng mangyari. But then again, hindi natin masasabi ngayon yan because of the consideration of the machine at lahat consideration. So we are planning, since we have our VSO office, Vulnerable Sectors Office, which was recently created last year, sila na po yung tututok with regards to EAPP and accessible polling place. Rest assured, in 2022 elections, lahat ng naging problema na nakaharap namin in 2019, ma-address na namin in 2022 NLE with the our new office, VSO office, headed by Director Bell.
I'm in full agreement, Commissioner. Sa probinsya, yung mga lola pang masigasig na manood ng bilangan, parang pista sa nayon. Pagbihira talaga. Nakakatuwa tayo. Thank you very much. And if there are no further comments, I think we've tackled the business at hand.
Madam Chair?
Maria Rebecca, I'm sorry, your name is cut.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you very much for the recognition. We would just like to comment on the Senate bills on the accessible polling places. As mentioned a while ago, in the implementation of the emergency accessible polling places in 2019, they have already included heavily pregnant women. And so the Commission wishes that this also be institutionalized in the form of a law for the pregnant women to also be included. But in here, we are proposing to also include not just the heavily pregnant women, because in the Comelec resolution, they are including heavily pregnant women or those who are at least 6 months on the family way. We at the Commission are recommending to include all pregnant women, especially those who could present certificates from their physicians that they, even if they are in their first trimester, that they are having a delicate pregnancy, that they be allowed to access accessible polling places. So that is for the Commission.
Yes, with all due respect to the Commission, I think obstetricians have now determined that every pregnancy is in fact high risk from the outset. So a physician's referral letter indicating their status as pregnant should be sufficient, and there should be no need to explain that they have special morbidities or other risks.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair, for that recognition.
Yes, okay. Mr. Paulo Sevilla, is that the correct name? I'm only reading from the screen.
Madam Chair, on the part of Democracy Watch,
Please unmute.
is my audio coming in clear now?
Very weakly, though.
Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
On the part of Democracy Watch, Madam Chair, we just have a few concerns. First,
is with regards to implementation, are there any proposed safeguards for ensuring that in the process of transfer from the voters' residence to the counting facilities, that there will be no tampering with the ballot itself? So that's our first concern with regard to implementation.
We'll appreciate your help on that. The bill has only been proposed. So wala pang na-work out na operating
I see.
guidelines.
Just clarifying po. And our second concern is also again with implementation. Are there any proposed methods as of now for how such ballots will be counted? Is the tabulation method going to be the same?
I think these are the same issues that Commissioner Casquejo just brought up.
I see.
Oo, kasi namang problema nga sila kasi wala nang BCM doon sa emergency accessible polling place. Pero yung mga lola na pumiglas na sila magsusuko sa machine.
I see. Thank you for the recognition, ma'am.
Thank you very much. And if you have any suggestions, like you said, there's that sticky portion where you have to transfer the ballot from the emergency area to the actual precinct to stick it into the VCM. So there's always that nervousness and anxiety on everyone's part. Sige, if there are no other questions or manifestations, nakita ko yung NCIP nandito kasi kasama rin kayo doon sa mga remote places. Yes, would you like to say something or submit a position paper? Yes, pagtaas ng kamay.
Okay, Attorney A.
Okay. Good morning, ma'am. The NCIP fully supports and welcomes any legislation that would support, of course, the rights of the IPs to suffrage. As to the bills po, if it would be passed into law, we recommend that NCIP be made part of the technical working group to draft the implementing guidelines. We also support our good senators' recommendations earlier to the COMELEC of bringing the polling places or yung satellite registrations closer to our communities. Kasi admittedly talaga, ang problem is logistics, especially for our communities who are living in far-flung areas. Nahirapan pa talaga sila mag-register and to vote. So it is our recommendation po sana sa COMELEC na to consider na bringing this special polling places and satellite registration areas closer to our communities. And I believe po, Madam Chairman, there were already initiatives made by the COMELEC in the 2016 national elections. There were pilot areas that were conducted in Mindoro, and I believe it was successful naman yung partnership ng COMELEC with the NCIP in bringing these special polling areas, polling places to our communities po. And we hope na the COMELEC consider expanding this project to other communities po. And we will be submitting our petition.
Only Mindoro? Can someone from COMELEC reply? Yes, Director Elna, sa Mindoro lang ninyo ginawa yung NCIP special IP polling place or na-expand na yan since 2016?
Yes, ma'am. 2016, we pilot tested the special voting centers for Mindoro. And last 2019 national and local elections, we expanded it to Palawan, mga IPs natin sa Palawan, and as well as San Jose del Monte po. And we're looking at, for the 2022 national and local elections, we will be expanding these special voting centers intended for our IP brothers. Now, as far as registration is concerned, mayroon tayong special date targeting satellite registration.
Mindoro and Palawan are just next door to each other. That's not much of an expansion.
Mayroon tayong ma'am sa San Jose del Monte din, and we're looking at IPs communities natin na i-expand natin yung concept ng special voting centers in Mindanao and in other area. Lake Cebu, Cotabato, mayroon na rin tayo dyan, ma'am. Nag-pilot testing na rin tayo.
Yes, I heard about that.
Yes, ma'am, Lake Cebu. Sa Tiboli, ma'am, this is South Cotabato, nakakapag-pilot.
That's right. Yeah, I'm very familiar, yes.
Yes, ma'am. And
Pero wala kayo sa, ako, pipitchin lang ako. Sa Northern Luzon, wala kayo sa Cordillera niyan.
Yes, ma'am. We will be expanding our coverage as far as the establishment of special voting centers. So practically, ma'am, last 2019 national and local.
Kasi forever diminishing na lang ang aming IP contingent. Samantalang nakikita naman namin yung mga IP dumarami. Pero pakonti ng pakonti yung registered voters, yung numbers who voted, kasi nga nahihirapan sila pumunta sa presinto.
So dito sa registration pa lang, ma'am, mayroon tayong mga special satellite registrations na isa-set ang mga election officers in areas na mayroon tayong mga IPs. These are special satellite registrations focused only in entertaining IPs natin doon sa mga barangay mismo, doon sa mga hinterlands mismo, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Perhaps what we can request, and I will request on behalf of the committee together with the NCIP, an update, just a short briefer on what occurred in 2016, 2019, and the expansion areas for 2022 so that we can manage expectations and we can also prepare.
Yes po, ma'am.
Sige, maraming salamat kasi interesado kami lahat dyan. Okay, if there are no more questions or manifestation, the committee has no further business for this hearing, but I enjoin you all, if you have any positions, ideas, or additional information with regard to the topics taken up during this hearing, I will be very, very happy to read and review them for inclusion in the committee report in any case. Maraming salamat. I see Senator Kiko once again. Is there something that we can help you with? Yes, Senator Kiko, Pangilinan.
Just a administrative matter, any request from this representation for the COMELEC to give us updates on the extraction of first-time voters sa SK, because they will start the extraction in March and they're looking at 1.6 million to be extracted. So we'd like to know by way of future submissions as to updates regarding how the extraction is going.
Yes, well taken, and the committee will follow up on that.
Thank you, ma'am. Maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat.
Ma'am, I think Miss Delphine Bakir from NCDA would like to comment rin po, ma'am. National Council of Disability Affairs po.
Oh, okay, please, yes. Wait, she disappeared. Kanina nakita ko. I'd like to recognize the National Council on Disabled.
Disability Affairs po, ma'am.
Sana yung sa differently able. Delphina Bakir, yes, please.
Ikaw na, sir. Nag-place lang ako, ma'am.
Yes? Nawala po? Naririnig ninyo ako? Wala kayong visual, pero baka naman pwedeng magsalita. Okay.
For now, ma'am, I think Attorney Justiniani.
Yes.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Last comment, ma'am. For ideals, we support the passage of Senate Bills 1870 and 1866 on providing special voting arrangement for senior citizens, PWDs, as well as for pregnant women and indigenous people. But there are perceivable disadvantages in postal voting for consideration of this honorable committee later on when the bill is being further developed. For one, we see that fraud can be easily committed because of in distant voting, the likelihood of coercion is higher than when voting when being done in the precinct. And for another, for example, illiterate voters may not be able to vote as how they will without the assistance of the. So perhaps there could be penal provisions that could punish the violation of the sanctity of voting by mail added in the pending bills. And additionally, there is a provision of Senate Bill 1870 that allows voter registration by postal voting. In the existence of the mandatory biometrics law, perhaps the implementing rules should address how to capture the biometric details of a person registering to vote if they decide to register voting by mail. So these disadvantages, however, can be addressed by legislation or by the creation of a comprehensive implementing rules and regulation. But ultimately, postal voting is still a very welcome development in moving forward in how the Philippines can do elections because of the convenience it offers and because of how it makes elections more inclusive and encouraging, especially to senior citizens, PWDs, and other vulnerable groups. That is all, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Dondi. And if you will, please think about your suggestion on the biometric identification and safeguards, because I believe that that's an interesting area of security. Kung meron kayong position, now or later on, please, we'll be very, very happy to review it. I think the NCDA is now able to communicate. I'd like to recognize Mr. Executive Director Rojas, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good morning to everyone. NCDA would like to manifest our full support to these bills, the bills that were discussed, because they promote the rights of persons with disabilities, particularly the right to our political rights. And we particularly focus on the accessibility of the polling places, not only on the structural accessibility, but also on the communications part. May mga them ay pumupunta. I think that we can also provide reasonable accommodation to them. Kasi po kung hindi po nila naiintindihan yung nangyayari, hindi nila naririnig, ay nade-deprive din po rin sila ng rights nila. It's very easy actually. Ball pen and paper would do na hindi na po kailangan ng talagang dedicated na mga sign language interpreter na which we practically do not have nationwide. Hindi po ganun karami kasi yan eh. Kaya po yung reasonable accommodation po is very important para po sa mga may kabansanan aside from the structural na mga accessibility na kinakailangan natin, like for example yung mga rampa o yung mga accessible polling places sa ground floor. Yun lang po, Madam Chair. We will send also our position paper later pagkatapos po nito. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you sa lahat po ng ating mga honorable senators.
Thank you very much, and I'm hopeful that we will be able to address these issues. Thank you very much, Engineer Rojas, for your continued support and participation. Sige po. Teka, I think I just have time for a very quick comment from Helen Graido. Ikaw ba yung nagtaas ng kamay?
Yes, Madam Chair. Yes, just to wrap up. From our end, as an election monitoring organization, we actually welcome the direction that this inquiry from Senator Kiko Pangilinan is going. And this is evidence that COMELEC is wanting to assure the safety of all its stakeholders, all the election stakeholders, including the voters, the candidates, their supporters, and the political parties. But now we would want to put forward the importance that should be placed on communications and transparency on the preparations that are being conducted by the Commission as managers of elections. And we also put forward the importance on making sure na yung mga preparations po natin are products of consultations of those who are actually experts on these matters. That would include public health experts po natin, even technology experts and election law experts, para po yung mga lalabas po na mga policies are well-rounded po, and hopefully by communicating we can communicate these safeguards these steps through a list of mga steps na gagawin po ng commission. That could be in the form of a code of conduct that would cover all electoral periods within the electoral cycle. So that would be all, Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, I think we've heard all the different views and the concerns, and I thank once again Commissioner Casquejo for giving up his lunchtime as usual, together with Director El Nas, mga suki natin, sina Ms. Buena Obra and Director Balingkit, our COMELEC directors who are all here. Maraming salamat po, and I'm hopeful that we can come up with good laws and guidelines that will actually expedite instead of hamper the exercise of our right to vote, even in the time of the pandemic. Thank you very much, and this hearing is thereby suspended.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Salamat mga
Thank you, Madam
suki.
Chair.
Nako, walang pagod. Thank you po. Thank you. Salamat.
Thank you, ma'am.
Paano pag
Eh,
out
naman
nito,
namin
Bon?
ang trabaho.
Opo.
Thank you, ma'am.
Salamat. Ingat. Gutom na ako.
Yes po.
Thank you po.